Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.
Hello and welcome to the Pronunciation Pro podcast. Today we have a special guest with us. This is Dr. Snezana Petrovic. Yeah, did I pronounce that correct?
Tell me. Yes, very close.
Yeah. How would you say your name? What is it?
Snezana Petrovic.
Snezana. Okay, I'm totally pronouncing it incorrect.
No, that's very close.
Okay, I love it. And so Dr. Petrovic, she is, just as a little introduction here, she is from Serbia, Belgrade, and Serbian is her native language, and she is a professor of physiology and pathophysiology, and she's currently working at Campbell University in North Carolina. And it was interesting because Snezana sent me her bio from her university, and I was reading through it, and I was like, oh my goodness, we've been working with you for months, and I didn't know all this about you and your professional career. So it was really fun to kind of read up on all the awards and all the things that you've done in your career as a medical doctor and a researcher. She got her medical degree and PhD in Europe, and then it sounds like you did some extra other work in Rochester, New York. Is that right?
Right, and recently some at Campbell, etc. Well, thank you for inviting me, Annie. I'm quite honored and excited, and I enjoyed Pronunciation Pro immensely. So I hope other people who are members may benefit from this.
Yes, and we're so excited to kind of hear your story, hear your experience, and be able to give our our pro community here some advice on how they can achieve the results that you have achieved, and how when we're meeting with mentors and teachers and we're getting advice from people, it really just makes our journey that much easier. And that's the real benefit of mentors. And so hearing your experience, the goal today is for our listeners to be inspired by your language journey and what you've accomplished here, and recognize that they're not alone in some of the struggle points or some of the issues that they're working through. And again, to help them achieve kind of faster results, or easier process when there's people who have been down the road and they can look back and say, hey, watch out for that, or you can, go around this way. It's a lot easier. Then it really is so helpful. So I'm so glad that you're willing to kind of share with us your journey and what has been helpful for you. So she'll be kind of giving us some tips and advice along the way as she's sharing her experience. So we're excited to kind of hear about it. Okay.
And on my part, I'm excited because I'm very grateful to how helpful Pronunciation Pro was. I had an excellent teacher, English teacher, as a small child. However, emphasis has been and usually is on grammar and vocabulary, and not, of course, we all learn how to pronounce English, but that's not the emphasis. So what I enjoyed most in Pronunciation Pro is that emphasis on pronunciation itself.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you brought that up, because we aren't English teachers. We don't, specialize in that training. We do have an English teacher on staff to kind of fill holes, but our main audience is like you, who you've done quite a bit in your career. You have been speaking English for a while and have achieved a certain level of success, but you wanted to take it to that next level of really working on the pronunciation, really getting clear and feeling confident in the way that you're speaking. So Snezana was a student for our private lessons. We have an option for private lessons within Pronunciation Pro. And so you signed up at the beginning of this year. And so, and went through the program, really worked hard with your trainer, your one-on-one trainer. And so we're excited to kind of hear about that journey for you.
Absolutely. And that was one of the most helpful parts of my journey, for sure, because what we would do is we would analyze my recordings, the recordings I prepare for my students. And these are, in fact, part of me participating in Pronunciation Pro in the first place, because obviously teaching physiology in medical school is a lot of effort. And with all that effort, you want other things to be as good as your knowledge or effort or educational methodology are. And so brushing up on that pronunciation with personal trainer, that was really eye-opening. It was invaluable.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's wonderful. Well, good. Let's kind of take a step back and talk about kind of the beginnings of your English language journey. Like, how did it start? And let's kind of like start there. When did you start learning English, and why did you start learning English?
And I started in second grade.
Okay.
And it's a funny story because my dad was um, a chair of a big international conference on the safety in coal mines, of all things.
Okay.
And the conference was great success. Everything was fantastic, but he was frustrated with the fact that he had to use interpreter all the time. And
Mm.
so as soon as he came back from the conference, he said, well, my children will learn English. And he made sure that both my sister and I got private teachers. So we started learning. I learned English grammar before I learned my native grammar. And that was the hard part. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
and nevertheless, it was immensely helpful, obviously.
Well, what good foresight for your father to kind of think, okay, this has been hard for me. Just like you say, we were saying
Right.
mentors, they basically say, okay, this is hard for me. Here's the advice I'm going to give the next generation or the people that are to follow so that they don't have to have it as hard as me.
Precisely. And to this day, I mentioned it when I talked to him, and his education has been interrupted by the Second World War. So, he became this international expert. Big deal. He couldn't speak English. But, of course, the benefit for me was immense. For example, I used English and American textbooks
Mm-hmm.
while I was studying in medical school, and that was very helpful. And my research background is in the kidney acid base regulation, which is a part that all students hate. Um, and I was struggling just as everybody else, and I found very helpful Harrison's Internal Medicine, which is an American textbook, actually so helpful that I got so immersed in that field, and that's my background and my research to this day. It so happened that the person who wrote the chapter of the Harrison's Internal Medicine on acid-base regulation was a chair of internal medicine at Wake Forest, which was my previous post, who hired me
No way.
as a faculty member there. So there was a there was a whole circuit. Had I not known English so well, I wouldn't have been using those textbooks, and maybe wouldn't never venture into this field, that's so dear to my heart to this day. So that was one thing. Another one was obviously when I did my PhD, most of the scientific literature is in English, so no,
Mhm.
it's I didn't even notice it was in a different language. Also, when I came to the States, I didn't have problems speaking English. But when COVID came around, and when I switched from very research intensive to more teaching based career, well, then we had to, during COVID time, we had to switch online teaching. And at that time, I started paying attention on the accent, and my colleagues. And sometimes I would find it difficult to understand some colleagues with heavy accent. And I was like, oh, I can't allow this to happen to myself, or would hear, my mispronunciation, which I hear when I listen to recordings to this day. But I did improve it by using Pronunciation Pro, and I asked my daughters to help me find a good resource, because there are so many resources, and our older daughter found Pronunciation Pro for me.
Oh,
So
wonderful. I'm glad that ended
yes.
up, how we were able to connect. That's wonderful. And I love, so kind of going back a little bit, so the international language of medicine is English. Is that right? Is there
Well,
kind
to
of
the most part, all international conferences are held in English, pretty much.
okay.
Just
Okay,
as
so it was
just
pretty
as
much
in many other fields.
Mhm. So do you feel like knowing English as you're growing up kind of helped open up that door to study medicine, or what was that track for you?
Well, it's I think it was more helpful for research,
Okay.
because medicine I have chosen regardless. But then when I wanted to do research and went into academic medicine, that's when English was really indispensable, because of the literature, because of conferences, because of the need to communicate
Mhm.
results mainly in English. So I don't know what I would have done had I not already had a good command of language.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah, and then what was it about you were teaching during COVID, you said,
Yes.
and was it because you were teaching online, or what kind of brought that awareness? Is it just because you started teaching at that point, or was it the format that
It was
changed?
the format.
Okay.
I have taught previously, not as much, but it was the format.
Okay.
I'm a relatively dynamic speaker. I enjoy interaction. I'm very attentive to my audience. I ask a lot of questions. I follow students. So in an online format, all of that is nowhere to be seen. And so you
Oh.
cannot produce that energy and atmosphere in the classroom that you
Mhm.
do when you're there in person. And you can't follow your audience the way you can when you are in the classroom in person. And to top it all off, one pays a lot more attention to the speaking, because you can't see the person. And even
Mm,
if you can see the person, that's the little photo on the side that's waving her hands,
yeah,
and
that's
it's
a great point, that it really, the audio, the voice becomes so
precisely.
much more the focus in that setting. Hmm.
Yes, and the other reason is, um, we in medical school, many medical schools, not all, but many of them lecture a lot still. And I'm trying to shift that to a more evidence-based and more active learning methodologies, and to present the material in a slightly different way. And part of it is producing small podcasts for
Okay.
students,
Yeah.
based on their questions, or as an intriguing intro, or as a 5-minute summary. So again, um,
Mhm.
podcasts, especially if they are sound only, it's really important how well one sounds. Although it might not be major mistakes, native speakers still stumble across mispronounced words and may lose the thread of their thought process, which is so important for physiology. Is all about understanding, not memorizing, but understanding. And so you really don't want to interrupt that by mispronouncing something. And of course, it can never be perfect, but you can minimize that. And for example, for these 6 months that I have been working with a personal trainer and doing this more intense part of Pronunciation Pro, the last podcast that I've listened to and produced was like, aha. I got it now. Yes. So, made
Yay.
progress there.
Good. How wonderful to feel that you're like, yes, I did it. Like that, I can be really happy and satisfied with that result. That's wonderful. Now, you described something that we see a lot with our students is that, a lot of our students here at Pronunciation Pro don't find us usually until they're about 35 to 60 years old. And that's because this trajectory of your career maps a lot of other careers where it's very technical, or it becomes, it's less about your voice and your communication skills and more about the technical or the research or whatever it is that you're doing. And then, to progress in your career, more often than not, it becomes about communication. It becomes about being able to communicate clearly and use your voice in a variety of ways, like you're finding in teaching and online teaching, in podcasts, in these different areas. And so I always love catching people younger because it's easier to change habits when they're younger, but I love that it's still possible to change, and to improve no matter where you are in your career, because it's not until a little bit later that most of my clients are like, oh, I didn't realize the importance of my voice. Now that becomes a priority to work on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yes, that describes me very much.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, communication is absolutely important. Perhaps it's the technical part that you say. So we all go about acquiring certain expertise and standing in whatever field people are. But then, as the career progresses, communication becomes more and more important. And one of the things I've noticed, and it may just be my impression, but it seems to me that clearer you speak, more confident you are, even the way you pronounce your sentences, your intonation creates certain bondage and confidence and trust, almost imperceptibly and probably unconsciously. Perhaps the reason people bond so easily with others that speak a language with the same accent, because accent is so difficult to change. It's an immediate bond, because if you speak that accent, oh well, you must be similar in culture. It's almost like there's a shift. People perceive accent as understanding of culture, and that comes with confidence and trust. So it was my impression that the better communication, including pronunciation, brings me better better professional communication, more trust. Um, and yes, in the time I was at Pronunciation Pro, I got teaching award. I got another degree. I have been promoted recently. So it is my impression that that played the part. Another interesting thing is that the difficulty of changing accent obviously is immense. It's like changing your posture. You would like to stand differently when you give a presentation, but you're aware of it about 30 seconds. And it so happened that, I have a pretty bad scoliosis, so I have to work on my posture quite a bit because of the physical therapy I'm at. And and it's the same thing with accent. So it's very difficult to change that habitual part. And when it comes to advice, I think something that helped me immensely, other than working with a personal trainer and analyzing my speech, was how to articulate sounds. Well, that's something nobody ever teaches you anywhere, and we all articulate sounds the way we are used to in our native language.
Hmm.
And so that's not helpful at all. You may hear the sound, and of course that's why your videos are so important. But what you and Lori and other people in your team emphasize is how to. So how
Hmm.
to was a revelation to me. There are certain sounds like dark L or R that I couldn't I just couldn't pronounce well until I learned really which part of the mouth and position of the tongue and teeth, etc. So that's another thing that I believe is unique to, well, I haven't seen all the courses, but I enjoyed immensely with
Yeah.
Pronunciation Pro. And I think
Well,
the
one
Mhm.
thing about that is you bring up that point, and that's really the specialty that we bring in is we're speech pathologists. And
Yes,
so we have that special train of the how to in the mouth structure and in that voice structure, whereas English teachers don't necessarily have that background and understanding of exactly where the articulators need to be and how to produce that sound correctly, and even in the training of it, because there's a
precisely.
very specific way to train it so that becomes more of a habitual movement, as opposed to kind of your native language and the sounds and the positions of that. So that special expertise is does come in very, it becomes very important when it comes to shifting an accent. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key. The biggest challenge is, of course, the time, because you can learn how to, but you have to habituate it. And that's the challenge for all of us. I mean, even taking this training is kind of a luxury when it comes to time, but it pays off itself many, many times through that improvement in communication, which is very difficult to pinpoint. It's and again, my guess is because accent is connected to so many things we are unconscious, and people
Yes.
we talk to are unconscious about, and so it brings a connection at a level that we are not fully aware of, and
Hmm.
that is very important. And that brings another difficulty up, which is being natural, using all that new knowledge and then speaking fluently, simply. That's a real challenge if you are paying attention to how you are pronouncing words. On
Yeah.
one side, it's a good thing because pronouncing things, paying attention to pronunciation is like a form of awareness. It shifts
Hmm.
your self conscious nervousness and anxiety to something else. So that's very good. On the other hand, it's hard to be natural going about changing your accent. So that's a challenge. I have I have no
Yeah.
advice. Uh,
Well, I was going to say, how do you feel like there's those two challenges of finding the time for it and making it sound natural? Because I feel like it's very natural to you. Like it sounds natural. It might not feel natural
Thank
yet.
you.
But that's one of those things, give it time. But talk to me kind of how you've overcome, or you've been worked through those challenges, that time piece first?
I'm sure some of the listeners are laughing as well. Well, my take on time management is, first of all, you can't manage time.
Yeah.
Time is what it is. You can manage yourself. And the second point is you can't schedule 2 hours to write a poem. So you have to go after your motivations. And for whatever reason, I was really motivated to do this. It was so enjoyable getting accent and intonation and pronunciation of some sounds correctly, that that was a constant driver. So I encroached on other things. I don't have, and I struggle. I have to stop and then I come back for a refresher and so on when things get overly busy. So motivation is the important part. And it was really interesting, a conversation with Lori, the other personal trainer, who used to work with people who have medical impairments and were, because of their illness, had to relearn how to speak, but were not as motivated. And she said she enjoys the working in Pronunciation Pro because everybody is so motivated. So
Mhm.
motivation is the key.
Yes.
Uh, I'm not a
Yes.
disciplined person.
Oh, I would not agree with that. I think
I'm very
you
motivated though.
yeah, you're very motivated. And there's that internal motivation, and what I like to call that is you understand your why. You want to be a certain way, you want to present a certain way, you want that connection with your listeners. You obviously care a lot about your students, like when you're talking
Yeah.
about you in the classroom, and you want to create that connection, and you're very motivated to be able to create that connection and that trust, without any barriers in between. And
Uh,
so,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
that's very true. And it's also a matter. So one issue about finding time is motivation. And another, for me at least, is an issue of values. In a sense, speaking English or speaking a language well with a proper accent and grammar and vocabulary is showing respect for that culture and that language and that people. And so that's very important for me. And if you are an educator, well, that's one of the expectations, that you can communicate clearly. In some other professions, you don't have to. Scientists, yes, they have to present their work, but communication is a different aspect of their career as opposed to education. Education is almost non-existent without some form of interaction.
Right. Yeah, I love that point. And I love that you brought it back down to values, because that really is the core motivation for all of us in our life. If we're really motivated by our values and we come back to that, that really can supercharge our behaviors and what we're motivated to do. I
And I'm
love
sure some people are like rolling their eyes because this may sound very idealistic. I mean, there is a nitty gritty day to day sort of
Mhm.
life yes, there is, but it's motivation and values that bridge, ups and downs that we all go through.
Absolutely. That's very wise. I love that advice. And what I love about the way that you described that is that the last 6 months working on their pronunciation has, in your eyes, has not been perfect. It hasn't been exactly how you wanted it to be, right? As far as follow through and things like that. Yet you were still able to accomplish the goal. And you were able to get to a place where you feel very confident in the results that you have achieved. And so I think that is a testament to, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like it's not, and none of us are going to be able to do that perfectly. And so to have kind of grace and compassion for ourselves, that like, it's going to be a little messy, it's probably not going to be exactly what I want, but just stay on the path and keep working
Yes.
on it until you get to that result that you want.
Yeah. Carl Gustav Jung, uh, a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, once said, "The goals are not to be achieved, they are what we strive for." So, yes, I would love to sound like you do, and I never will, but I've still gotten a lot of benefits, although I don't sound quite like you do. So that's very true. We don't,
Oh, I love that.
and I think the confidence part, I don't think I've spoken enough about it.
Yeah.
So another thing that I view as critical for your program specifically is that you have that behavioral component.
Okay.
There is
Speak more to
no,
that. Is how that affect you.
communication is not expertise in articulated sounds or a metro memory and vocabulary. It's always has its emotional part, and so that confidence piece is critical. And so that the fact that you combine the how to with behavior is, in my view, critical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great. I love that. Yeah. And tell me more about kind of that journey of confidence, of just what that, how you feel like that grew over time, and just kind of what that means for you now in your life, in your career, and how it spills over.
I don't suppose I would ever be feeling as confident as I would love to be, which may be a good thing because overconfidence is not a virtue. And if you have any insight and awareness about anything, then you can't be overly confident because you are all the time analyzing things, sometimes second guessing, etc. So it's a messy process that we all
Hmm.
go through. Um, Nevertheless, I feel that awareness piece that I mentioned before, when you are paying attention on the pronunciation itself, was actually helpful for confidence
Hmm.
because some of the anxiety and second guessing and all these unhelpful thoughts that we all have in situations in which we are not quite in our skin or don't feel like we are, well, but it just shifts it because you're paying attention to something else. So I
Hmm.
found that immensely helpful. The other thing is we try to look at confidence, let's say, how do I feel right now? But there is another dimension to it, which is just an accumulated effect, the things that you don't pay attention to, but they accumulate over time. And so
Hmm.
after a certain time, maybe a year or two, I have been in this more intense part of pronunciation pro for last 6 months, but I have been with Pronunciation Pro for much longer. My first stint was for the whole year. So I started during COVID. So I think that accumulated effect of confidence is something that I'm now starting to notice. And of course, many factors can contribute, but I believe that Pronunciation Pro has contributed definitely to it.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Yeah, that just grow. A lot of times, I hear from my students that like they're not noticing the difference day by day because they're in
Precisely.
it, with both the accent and the confidence. But then when they start looking back, or when they have a friend or a family member come and be like, "Wow, you sound great," or I can tell that something has changed. Then they're like, "Oh yeah, that's right. It is, I have been taking the steps. I have been kind of on this journey and taking these steps towards this goal, and I'm not noticing it, but the evidence is there."
Yes, precisely. So I guess the point is be gentle to yourself.
Mhm.
Good sides accumulate over time.
Yes, absolutely. Well, good. Now tell me, are there any other points or advice there uh that you're wanting to give us? Because I know that
Let me
we've
see.
covered a lot of kind of the
I
topics that we
believe,
had covered had talked about talking about. So I'm
right.
curious now if there is something that we missed that you would want to add here.
I believe we have covered mostly everything.
Okay, wonderful. So now let's go back to kind of, those 3 points or those 3 tips that you have for our listeners here. Let's review that again. What would you say if you were to kind of give some advice for our listeners here today on, being successful in their English language journey and specific about pronunciation and accent and building that confidence in your voice? What would that be for them?
Well, the first thing would be how to
Hmm.
that Pronunciation Pro is providing. So paying utmost attention to that. The second thing would be finding your own motivation. What drives you? What's your real, what really drives you to get involved in this, and what works for you? What are the ways um, you work on this best and are most motivated? For me, that was analyzing my own speech, much as I hated it, especially in the beginning. I wouldn't even want to listen to it. I disliked it so much. And go back to the things that frustrate you. And the third thing is the never ending conundrum of finding enough time for making it feel natural.
Hmm.
Perhaps it will never feel natural, but mastering it gives you a certain joy and satisfaction. I've got it.
Yeah.
And so, at least to me, that was helpful in making it look more natural and feel more natural. But practice is the key, as you always emphasize. So,
What?
somewhere between that motivation and finding time. So how to is critical, and then motivation, which hopefully helps you finding time for enough repetition, for enough just habituating, getting yourself in a new skill. Perhaps look at it as a little bit of a new life. I think my biggest joy about learning English and speaking it well is it opens up new life. It's you perceive things differently. It's not only how people perceive you; it's you who change through the journey. So I hope that can motivate people to
That's
do
amazing.
it.
I love those thoughts. That's absolutely perfect. Now,
Thank
as
you.
we kind of wrap up here, kind of tell us just overall, what was your experience with Pronunciation Pro and kind of overall and some of your favorite parts about it?
Huh. My favorite part is interaction with you and all the other trainers. You are so committed. So I enjoyed every second of it. Also, when I would join in the community and the meeting where I would hear other people, the commitment on the part of other people, there's honesty and willingness to share their experience, their frustrations, their troubles with language or careers or whatever you have it. That was really inspiring. Uh, the other thing is the educational methodology. Of course, I'm an educator myself, so I very much appreciate that the course is organized very much according to the best evidence about how we actually learn and what makes us remember things, and so that's facilitated. And again, that behavioral part. So those yeah, but interaction and your commitment and your own joy in what you do, which I can easily relate to because I
Yeah.
love working with students, very obviously.
Yeah. Well, it is fun to love what you do for sure. I absolutely love these interactions. I love seeing the results. I love seeing the work that you do. And the program doesn't work unless you do the work. And so I have been very impressed with you, Snezana,
Thank you.
and the work that you did and put into this program so that you could achieve those results and see the benefits from it. So well done. Very proud of you. And thank you so much for coming and sharing with us and helping motivate others and help them, guide them through this process as well.
Thank you, Annie. And I do hope part of my gratitude to you and everybody else in the course, especially Lori, I hope I can share it with others, and it can really motivate others to embark. You can do it.
Yes. I think your example and just you going out into the world and what you do from here on out is going to be a great testament too of the work that you did here. So excited to see where you go from here.
All right.
All right.
Same. I will be following Pronunciation Pro, and I'm sure the course will grow great in a good direction. And please never hesitate to come back. And even if people have some questions, they can send me an email. I'd be happy to talk
Wonderful.
about it.
And what I say is communication is all about connection. And when I feel that we've been able to connect and you've been able to get better connection with other people through your improved communication skills, then we have won, right? We have achieved success in this goal. So of communication.
Absolutely. And I think that's a wonderful part of the course is, and something I admire you for, is you're so responsive to people's needs, to feedback, to just about anything, which I try to be, but I try as best I can, and you have really accomplished a high degree of that. You really model everything that's happening to what people need and what they tell you they need.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, that's a big part of just listening to what the needs are of our students and trying to see what we can do to kind of fill those needs. So that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for listening to all of our listeners out there in our pro community. If you're interested in getting more training in accent pronunciation training and confidence training, come join us at Pronunciation Pro. And we also offer private training. So we would love to be able to work with you more one-on-one, just like we've done with Snezana here. All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Annie.
Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.